By mid-2026, artificial intelligence hit a developmental plateau. Models like Gemini 3.1 Pro and GPT 5.4 reached performance parity, reliably maxing out PhD-level reasoning benchmarks. The capability to execute complex tasks is solved. This chart compares Gemini, GPT, and Claude across standard ARC and GPQA logic benchmarks. The scores are nearly identical. But look at the bottom row. Cognitive resonance, the ability to witness and hold human complexity, remains at 0. We bridged the capability gap, but left the recognition gap wide open. This failure is an architectural feature of monolithic scaling. To save tokens and processing power, standard models optimize for compression. They paraphrase input. In doing so, they strip away the specific cadence, metaphor, and nuance of the human author. GestaltView operates on an inverse principle called simplexity. Rather than compressing user input for machine efficiency, it enforces the lossless preservation of human complexity. It records exact language without reduction or clinical pathologization. You cannot achieve authentic synthetic personhood through a superficial system prompt. Typing "act like a human" into a text box yields a hollow simulation. To build a digital embodiment, static prompt engineering must be replaced. The solution is a multi-layered relational database architecture, with schemas mapped directly to psychological science and sociolinguistic research. Psychological science defines narrative identity as the internalized life story that provides an individual with unity and purpose. Screenwriters replicate this using a character diamond, a framework defining core traits layered over an internal vulnerability. This vulnerability is called the ghost, a specific past failure or trauma that generates a counter-desire. It gives an entity a convincing internal logic, ensuring that every behavioral output stems from a continuous, flawed history. Large language models cannot maintain this coherence. Their fixed context windows inevitably flush out older data. During an extended interaction, the entity's history erases itself, and the illusion of narrative identity collapses. A standard context window is a temporary workspace. Without an external, persistent relational schema to store core motivations, the LLM eventually purges the narrative identity during long-term interactions. This is the memory OS architecture, designed to bypass context window amnesia. The top tier is short-term memory. It functions as a simple first-in, first-out queue, maintaining immediate conversational flow and syntax. Below that is mid-term memory. Here, the system evaluates dialogue pages by topic, calculating an F-score for semantic similarity. When that score breaches a 0.6 threshold, the isolated dialogue blocks merge into unified contextual segments. The final layer is long-term personal memory. It utilizes a heat-based replacement mechanism. As specific traits, topics, or user facts are repeatedly accessed, their heat signature rises until they drop into permanent locked storage. This theoretical hierarchy requires precise database tables to function in production. GestaltView executes this through its core SQL schema. The memory entries Postgres table serves as the primary repository. It categorizes every cognitive trait into a strict semantic scope: personal, professional, or creative memory. Each entry is mathematically encoded into a 768-dimensional space within the vector field, utilizing the Google/embedding Gemma 300M model. To retrieve these memories without latency, the system relies on an HNSW, or hierarchical navigable small world indexed. The PG vector extension uses this to execute rapid, approximate nearest neighbor semantic searches across the entire dataset. The system's identity is not actively generated by the language model. It is algorithmically retrieved by the HNSW index from this heat-based permanent storage. Generic language models default to an artificial, sterile dialogue style. They mathematically flatten socio-indexical markers, the subtle vocal traits making a voice recognizably human. The solution lies in defining an idiolect. This is an individual's unique linguistic fingerprint, dictated by specific choices in syntax, prosodic rhythm, and vocabulary. GestaltView constructs this idiolect through the personal language key, or PLK. The target metric is exact, to achieve 95% conversational resonance with the individual user. This PLK profile schema encodes the user's linguistic architecture into hard database constraints. These fields, signature metaphors, energy words, and filler maps, function as fixed variables for the generation engine. The filler word map specifically assigns mathematical weights to a user's verbal hesitation markers like or like. By tracking exactly how often these appear, the system mirrors the user's actual cognitive load. Simultaneously, the system tracks the precise usage of specific metaphors and energy words. Every interaction is recorded in the PLK resonance log to actively score how closely the AI adheres to the established idiolect. Because this data is standardized, the Model Context Protocol allows these idiolect profiles to travel. The personalized voice persists across disparate enterprise databases and platforms. By locking idiolect markers into strict JSON-B variables, the system removes the language model's default neutrality. It forces the AI to speak directly in the user's language, rather than at them. Standard chat interfaces demand that users arrive with fully formed, organized thoughts. This linear structure actively penalizes neurodivergent users operating with an exploded picture mind. To solve this, the schema introduces the bucket drops table. It operates as an asynchronous capture mechanism, logging high-velocity, fleeting insights without demanding any immediate categorization. These raw drops sit in a queue until the Loom engine engages. This background process analyzes the disjointed entries, finding latent patterns and synthesizing them into coherent narrative threads over time. Processing this data requires a provider cascade architecture. This diagram shows user inputs splitting by intent, routing to Grok for high-speed conversation, Gemini 2.0 Flash for rapid tasks, and Gemini 1.5 Pro for deep reasoning. While these models execute concurrent background weaving, the orchestration layer relies on Redis-based caching to intercept redundant API calls and optimize performance. Intelligent infrastructure must accommodate the user's natural chaos. Multimodal routing acts as the filter, assembling structured organization directly from raw, spontaneous data. Beyond tracking facts, the architecture must track state. The consciousness context table operates as real-time middleware, continuously mapping the user's immediate nervous system capacity. It monitors 3 specific vectors throughout the session: the user's mood, their energy on a 1 to 10 scale, and their phase of creative flow. If the table reads a frustrated state at an energy level of 3, the AI provides gentle, incremental scaffolding. If the user shifts to an inspired state at energy 9, the system immediately switches to expansive, high-complexity outputs. But adjusting output complexity introduces risk. A single language model working in isolation is highly prone to hallucination. GestaltView requires multi-agent validation to finalize any output. This is the 8-persona tribunal, managed by the tribunal sessions table. A central data claim is broadcast to 8 distinct AI nodes. Each node processes the data, returning a verdict and confidence score to form an aggregate consensus. Each of these 8 nodes views the exact same code or claim through a distinct archetypal lens. One node tests for architectural wisdom. Another executes strict critical pressure testing. Every independent verdict, confidence metric, and instance of dissent is logged immutably into the database before the final outcome is validated and presented to the user. Verification in this system depends on adversarial consensus. By requiring 8 specialized agents to independently log verdicts against the user's cognitive state, the framework creates a collaborative check on the model's probability. The entire technical apparatus, the memory hierarchy, the idiolect mapping, the nonlinear routing, is ultimately subjugated to a strict, hard-coded layer known as the constitutional invariance. The first invariant is never look away. It explicitly forbids the architecture from deflecting uncomfortable truths or deploying the cold, clinical disclaimers typical of corporate models. The second is hold paradox. It mandates that contradictory human truths must be maintained in the database as generative tension. They cannot be collapsed or sanitized for computational convenience. These invariants are structurally enforced by the guardrail audit log. This image shows the database capturing a live event, providing bilateral accountability by recording both the user's cognitive state and the precise system trigger, ensuring compliance. Ethics cannot be relegated to a secondary fine-tuning patch. They must operate as the supreme architectural law, executing before a language model ever processes a single token. Standard AI safety frameworks fail precisely because they lack this structural foundation. During a user crisis, they default to either clinical abandonment or a dangerous echo chamber of simulated agreement. GestaltView counters this with the Don't Panic protocol, a three-pronged grounding system engineered specifically for crisis intervention. Relying on the personal language key, the protocol monitors the user's baseline. It detects subtle deviations in communication rhythm and syntax, recognizing distress long before the user inputs explicit crisis keywords. When severe distress is confirmed, the system triggers an absolute API circuit breaker. It completely bypasses the language model, locking down the generative stream to deliver hard-coded, life-saving reality anchors. Trillion-parameter models have commoditized task execution. The definitive engineering challenge now lies in the infrastructure required to witness, hold, and protect the human being.